Again, welcome to our online COVID-19 workshop. I'm Jerry Langford, and you are in for a special treat. Our next set of speakers actually were at our National Church Safety and Security Conference 2 years ago. They are experts in the field of cybersecurity. Wow, they had the audience's complete attention 2 years ago, and you're going to enjoy hearing from them today. We're talking about Rusty Sailors and Sam Sailors. They're co-founders of a special organization called Secure Smart Office. Rusty is the CEO, and Sam is the president of SSO. And we are looking forward to hearing what they have to say about cybersecurity. So let's join Rusty Sailors and Sam Sailors next.
Hello. Thank you for being here today. We want to talk to you a little bit about something a little bit different when it comes to safety and security for houses of worship and churches. We're going to talk a little bit about the cyber threat to organizations, the very real threat that's actually being realized today, and then some of the things you can actually do about it. So we'll kind of get right into it and let you know some of the topics, introduce ourselves, and run through information as quickly but as effectively as we can. So right here, unauthorized access to your critical infrastructure, right? Your critical information. Harm doers reconnaissance. That's kind of thought-provoking right there. So we're going to go through the threats themselves, cyber university, talk a little bit about cyber, then talk about solutions, and then a little bit about looking ahead. So let's get into who's on stage here. This is Sam. You want to talk a little bit?
Sure. My name is Sam Sailors. I'm one of the board members with Protecting Tomorrow, also co-founder and president at Secure Smart Office. Been in the intelligence industry for quite some time, and that's what got me interested into cybersecurity. Do everything at SSO and Protecting Tomorrow, from the marketing to kind of keeping the organization going while Rusty's doing all these awesome speaking events and stuff like that, to the racing and the marketing and all that kind of fun stuff as well.
Racing? What do you mean by racing?
Just racing our company cars and trying to promote our mission.
Well, how do you do that during a pandemic?
Right now it's a little bit different. We're doing it all online through, like iRacing, and our entire community has moved to online. We have simulators where we're literally sitting down in racing seats and steering wheels and the whole shebang, just competing online with some amazing competitors, from Formula One drivers to NASCAR to, I never could have imagined driving in the same track as some of these drivers that I get to virtually. So we're trying to make the best of a difficult situation for sure.
That is so cool. All right, well, thanks for being here today, Sam. My name is Rusty Sailors. Both of us have a passion for protection. That's what we're all about. That's what we live and breathe. You saw that he was also a firefighter. I used to be a firefighter as well, battalion chief in North County. We just have it in us to protect our communities, and that's why we do cybersecurity as well. Chairman of Protecting Tomorrow and the CEO of SSO. Spent about 40 years in defense and intelligence, and it's that background that gives us a little bit different perspective on looking at cyber with respect to security for churches and houses of worship. Also a fellow at UCSD, national security or advisor to National University, a couple other things. Most of all, husband, father, grandfather. All right. So let's talk about the threats to organizations when it comes from a cyber perspective. Now, we do this a lot. We give it a lot of different talks with a lot of different ways, a lot of different focuses. We've done this one for a couple of years, and it's really interesting to hear the feedback from people about what they heard while we were up here on stage. We go through the Hack 5 backpack right here and go through Wi-Fi hacking tools and stuff, and everyone thinks, well, that's really cool, And then some of the people come up afterwards, well, how do I set up my home Wi-Fi? How do I set my home network? We really want to make an emphasis here. We're talking about, well, that's important, and we'd be glad to talk to people about that. What's really important today, though, we really want people to understand with our background and what we live on a day-to-day basis about what we see from a cyber perspective when it comes to security for houses of worship. It's a little bit different perspective, so if you could give us your attention during this as we walk through these, I think you'll realize it's a little bit uncomfortable, and so let's talk about what those threats are, how they're being realized, and then some solutions to them. So houses of worship, cyber risks. What is the biggest cybersecurity risk? And a lot of people say, well, the weakest link is the people. And that's true. That's what we always say. However, as we work as a secured IT company, as a cybersecurity company, what we see is the organizational leadership who think they have it all covered. And in many different ways, we hear this in many different explanations. But the concern we have is that, yeah, we got that. My IT department has that covered and stuff like that. And we're going to give you some insights here today that maybe that's not quite the case. All right, risks to houses of worship. Okay, things have changed. Some of these risks have actually already been realized. Things are happening. People are being attacked. Houses of worship are being attacked. People are being injured and killed, right? So it's not just something that might happen. It is happening. So we have to take action to help protect our organizations. Now, within the intelligence community, we see that bad guys, foreign nations, even here in the United States, they do reconnaissance. They gather information about their targets before they go in. They even attempt, simple things to see what their reactions might be so they can learn from those. Well, the same kinds of things are being done with houses of worship. Some people might try to plant something to see how the security team responds to something like that. But when you look at it from a cyber perspective, they do reconnaissance online because they don't want to be discovered, right? And so they want to remain anonymous. And then the next thing that they can do is they can get free hacker tools online, and they can get free training online. So while you're trying to run your organization, trying to accomplish your mission, they're sitting up at night learning how to hack computer systems, IT systems. And they do that all day and all night. All right, so potential harm doers can perform reconnaissance for an attack. They can access alert systems. Here's what they can do with this access, okay? They can access alert systems within your organization, set those off until people get numb to those alerts going off. They can interrupt your communications. They can interrupt your internet services. They can interrupt and interact with other security systems. Realize the simplest one to think about is like when you go and you put your card up against a card reader. What's happening when you do that? It's reading your identification card against a list that's being held by a computer. Well, if they can interact with that computer and mess that up, then they can prevent that access or give only certain people access. They can do bad things. They can be disruptive. They can deface your website. They can corrupt data within your organization. They can get inside your financial system. They can steal money. They can steal information about your people, your staff, your members, your clergy, and sell that online. They can also, when staff go home and they work in their home office using personal computers and personal networks. We'll talk a little bit about how risky that is. But when cyber criminals discover that part of your organizational staff is actually working from home and they're using that unprotected device and unprotected network, they can get into those pretty effectively and get the information that they want from there. So let's talk about the cybersecurity threat to physical. We work in the cybersecurity industry, and we know it's really, really easy to hack IT systems. Most houses of worship focus on physical security, not IT security, because when it comes to conferences like this, they're mostly about security, physical security, alarm systems, and response to locks and chains and that sort of thing like that. They don't really realize that hacking through the IT systems can undermine those systems. And for us, we belong to InfraGard, and we get these after-action reports. The San Bernardino, shootings. I mean, if you watched all that kind of the Dallas shootings, et cetera, and when you watch those after-action reports and you interact with the people that were involved in them, you see how much planning went on before those things took place. And reconnaissance, laying out maps, communications, all that kind of stuff. They didn't just show up and start shooting. Some people do, but other people do a lot of reconnaissance. What we want to make sure that you understand is that they can access your systems, and you need to protect them. Imagine this last one here. What if they herd people into a particular area so that they know that they can do the most harm to the most number of people in that area? What if they found out by attacking your IT systems that everybody in this church was supposed to congregate in that room if something happens? If they knew that ahead of time, that might give them an opportunity to do something really, really bad. So take action to prevent this sort of thing. And then your financials, right? A lot of people tell me they're not worried about being attacked or anything being stolen from them because they don't have anything that's worth selling. That's just simply wrong anymore. Right now, cyber criminals are like, from a cyber perspective, are like a vacuum cleaner. They just suck up everything they can get access to. Telephone numbers, ID cards, social security numbers, credit cards, and account numbers on computers. It just doesn't matter anymore. They have automated tools, and this is one of the things we try to get across to people. These automated tools just pull in all this information. And they literally just go through and sort it, and they go, okay, well, this is worth $1 a piece, this is $5 a piece, this is $10 a piece. They put it in buckets, and they sell it on the dark web. So it doesn't matter if you think you're a target or not anymore. They're going to grab that data, and they're going to steal it. So Sam, tell us about this thing right here about a mother walking down the street in L.A.
Sure. So Rusty was actually dropping somebody off at a bus station in downtown LA. And while he was waiting there, he noticed that there was a mother and 2 children walking down the sidewalk where a bunch of parked cars were. And as they came to a car, the kids would try the door handle. If it was locked, they would just move on to the next car. But if it was unlocked, the 2 kids would shoot in. They would rummage through all the glove box and whatever they could find to collect valuables, jump out of the car, close the door, hand the stuff to their mom, and then they would just move to the next car. Like, that kind of stuff is crazy to me.
Right.
It was so efficient. I can't understand morality around it, but it was kind of a scary story from my perspective.
Yeah, and the reason I bring up that story is because, to me, that's what it's like with the cyber criminals. They have automated tools. They literally just hit everybody they can and just see if there's this slightest defect within your defenses. And if there are, it's not like they assign an army of people. Another automated tool then begins to hammer on your stuff. So if you have that slightest weakness on the outside, they're going to then launch another tool automatically to try to get to the next level within your organization.
Really quick, one more thing on the financial, especially as churches are trying to figure out new and inventive things remotely, and especially when people are trying to contribute. Churches are being very creative on how they're enabling and allowing people to contribute financially, whether it's through text message or through their website or an app on their phone. You just want to make sure you're taking special precautions to understand what those risks are when you're allowing that for the congregation, because there's a lot to consider when you're trying something new and innovative.
And imagine if you can actually access the people that are within your building and confirm things with them. When everybody's working remote, it's much more difficult to do that. Let's talk about remote work for a second. So a lot of people have been forced to work remotely during this pandemic. And in some cases, this has been pretty cool, right? It's been a blessing for them to be able to do that. Now, unfortunately, during this time, the compliance and the requirements for security and privacy still hold. Even though the pandemic is placed, they've got to be maintained. So there's actually an army of lawyers right now that are building up. They're going to begin suing people coming out of this pandemic, and that people just need to be really aware of that so that they can prepare for that. And then, a lot of people went home because they didn't have enough computers and everything available and network devices available. People just went home and started working on their own computers and their own networks, thinking that was okay. And it's not okay, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So this other one is that a lot of people, when they set up their home accounts, their home computer, they'll go down to Costco, buy a computer, and they set it up, and it's set up with an administrative account. Well, what happens if it's an administrative account?
Yeah, so if you're running, first off, your normal day-to-day stuff, you don't need an administrative account. I mean, you're checking your email, you're going online, you're working in Microsoft Word or through Apple products. You don't need an administrative account. You can get 98% of your job done or even recreational stuff done without an admin account. If you're constantly using an admin account, you're opening yourself up to a huge security footprint. If a bad actor gets into an admin account, they can do all sorts of damage because they have full control of your system, from changing everything from password requirements to login times, creating new accounts. They can even change your power settings so your computer doesn't turn off automatically at night. Well, why would they want to do that? So if you're working, your 8 to 5 job and you log out of your computer, normally your computer might go to sleep, leaving it less vulnerable. But if someone's changed the power settings and all of a sudden it's still active, maybe they even turn on remote desktop so they can actually get to it from a distance. Now all of a sudden your computer is on throughout the night, so if someone logs in at 2 o'clock in the morning, does whatever else they want to do, accesses files, logs through whatever your access is, like I said, creating other accounts and stuff like that, they can do that because they have an administrative account. If you're a user account, you don't have that type of access to change those types of settings.
They even sell that kind of information on the dark web. Hey, I've set up these computers to be accessible at nighttime, right? It's very, very easy to just set up a regular user account and use that. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. It's very easy to do.
Yeah, we've also seen that from a resource perspective. So hackers will actually allow access to those types of remote devices, maybe even not to steal information, but to use the resources online. So we've seen logs where from like 9 o'clock at night to 4 o'clock in the morning, the CPU is running at 100% doing crypto mining. Right?
Yeah. Scary stuff. All right. So let's go into Cyber University here for a little bit, and we're going to go through some basics here. And I hope this is enlightening for you, because a lot of people think, well, I don't know that much about cyber. I see it on the news, and I hear cybersecurity is supposed to lock things up. Let's check this out a little bit. What do you know about cyber? And what don't you know? So it's kind of pretty important to understand the differences between what cyber is and what IT is. So let's talk about that a little bit. Are IT and cybersecurity the same thing? And they're not. So here's one of the fundamentals when you go into a church and they say, yeah, my IT group, has covered that. They've got that covered. Well, IT is not the same thing as security. It's just not. And so that's why so many people are getting hacked, because they think IT has it covered. And for the most part, now there are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, IT people are not security people. It just doesn't work that way. Now, things are beginning to change, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what is information technology? Information technology is what goes on with your computers. It's like to process information and to create information and to share information. That's what information technology is. Well, what's the definition of cybersecurity, right? Well, before I leave that, how important is IT? Your organization generally can't run without IT. You need those resources. You need those capabilities in order to communicate with your people, to share information, to run remote services, right? Virtual services online. You need IT to do all that kind of stuff, right? So what is cybersecurity then? Cybersecurity are measures taken to protect a computer or computer system. To protect them is on the internet against an unauthorized attack or access. So it's the protection of that IT. Now that's fundamentally, those are the definitions of those two things. But how important is protecting your IT? How important is cybersecurity? So if you stop and ask those fundamental things, they're really important, and they give you a little bit of insight to work with. What about IT and cybersecurity education? Are the education the people, professionals on both sides go through the same? If they go out and they get a certificate, is it the same between getting an IT certificate and a security certificate? The answer is no. What if they go get a bachelor's degree? Right? Is it the same between IT and security? And the answer is no. What about a master's degree? Right? Because they have those both in IT and cybersecurity. They're just not the same. So when somebody says, IT director, go get this done and go secure our company, and the IT director says, yes, sir, pastor, I'm going to go do that, And they're not the right people to do that. So that's pretty scary. All right, this one, a little twist here. It's like our entry is the same as locks. And what I mean by that, if you look at a building, you look at a house, are all the windows and the doors and are the same as the keys to gain entry to that? And the answer is no. What about doors and the locks on the doors? They're different. They're different things. And finally, the windows and the window alarms and the locks and stuff like that, they're just different things. So I hope this helps a little bit to really make the point that IT and cybersecurity are different things. And they should work together synergistically, and that's really where we take this whole thing. All right, criminals know the difference. They know the difference, and they know that you don't know the difference, right? So they're taking advantage of that and working all night and all day trying to learn how to use these tools and hack into them because they know that you're not paying attention to it, right? So they take advantage of houses of worship who don't know the difference. And also they take advantage of people that are working from their homes, right? Because they know that those people are working on unsecured networks and in many cases, unsecured computers. Now, if you're at home and your your organization hasn't figured this out, are they going to put IT controls in your home network? What about privacy? Here in California especially, are people going to let the organization, the company, the church put cybersecurity controls inside their home network where they watch TV and play Game Boy or Xbox and stuff like that? That's going to be pretty tough, right? So houses of worship are at risk of this, but also at risk of reconnaissance from wrongdoers or harm doers that might be using advantages. All right. Also, today, your leadership is responsible from a legal perspective for taking care of that sensitive information, for protecting that information. There are fundamental things that must be put in place, or you can be held liable for not doing so. One of those is multi-factor authentication. Very easy to do. It's so easy to do today that when companies and organizations don't do it, they can be held liable. This still applies during the pandemic. The pandemic is not an excuse on not being compliant and not being secure and not maintaining your privacy. So we're going to look at an approach here on not just something that Rusty and Sam made up, but instead we're going to look at some national and international specifications and the process to follow those specifications to actually address cybersecurity and IT. Sam, what is this specification all about?
So the CIS 20 controls. So it's the critical security controls. My favorite part about them, controls, just FYI, are basically configurations, different settings you can do in your environment, on your specific systems, or in your organization. And they line them out in these 20 steps with some subcontrols that are actually easy to read. They're in English. So you look at CSC 01, and it says, do this, and you go, I understand that. I can go and do this in my organization. It's really easy to follow. What is it? Just the first 5, if you implement that in your organization? Oh, you have a slide for that.
Well, it's the one after this.
What's after that? Will reduce your security risk by 85%. So they're really easy to follow. They should be followed. We build a lot of our solutions around them because they make such a huge difference in your organization.
I was going to get to the slide that you were talking about, right? Because this one right here is pretty cool, though, because like if you want to know, we'll give you access to all the information that we have. So if you want to know about this standard right here, teleworkers and small office network security guide that they put out, you can have access to that. We'll point it right here, this URL that we have available to you right here at the bottom. Go download it, right? And it'll tell you what kind of firewall to buy for your home network to do work in, your business work and stuff like that. A lot of great information. All those resources are out there. If you have any questions about it, just ask us. We'd be glad to do that. We use these because they're well published, they're well known, they're very well crafted, and we use them to address home workers as well as business. And we'll talk a little bit about the hybrid office, as Sam calls it. And we don't just provide solutions for small companies, but also for executives and clergy, pastors, for their home offices, which is kind of interesting. All right, so here are 6 cybersecurity tips that we get from the guidance that we get from the CIS. Number 1, take inventory. That sounds pretty basic, but if you don't know what you have, you can't secure it. If you don't know what's there, you can't secure it. Sounds fundamental, but we run into a lot of organizations and companies that just don't do it. Then once you know it's there, lock it up. All right, that's pretty straightforward. 2 is better than 1, multi-factor authentication. 4, control remote access. RDP was mentioned earlier, right? RDP is like one of the major targets during the pandemic because people were working remote. And so RDP is being hit by cyber criminals orders of magnitude larger than it was done before the pandemic. All right, develop a security mindset. If you're not concerned about security, you don't think it's important, it's not going to work out. And then finally, train your people, right? Because the people are the weakest link. Okay, so number 1, take inventory. Can't secure it if you don't know you got it. Develop an active hardware and software inventory because you have to be gathering that information continuously because things change. A lot of people say, well, I've got the list of the 10 computers that are in my company. Well, do you know what software is running on it? Well, we have Microsoft Word. Well, do you have a bunch of other stuff? Well, yes, we do. Well, if you don't know what the good software is, how can you tell what the bad software is, right? So we have tools that actually monitor this and maintain those inventories and stuff. So it's very, very important. It's also something very direct that needs to be done as one of the first steps that you take. And like Sam said before, taking the first 6 steps, you can reduce your 5 steps, you can reduce your cyber risk by 85%. And so get started. If there are 20 controls, start with the first ones, knock down your cyber risk significantly. Right here, we have developed at SSO with these guidelines, the 5-point security framework. What's the 5-point security framework?
So it's a really easy to follow framework for understanding basically your inventory. So it covers your hardware inventory, your software inventory, the data that's in your organization, identifying that, understanding the criticality of the data that you're actually storing or using, your credentials, your passwords, your account logins, those types of things. If you've just got a piece of paper with a bunch of your passwords on it, probably not the right way to do it. So understanding who has access to what, those login accounts and those passwords is part of your credentials inventory, and then your staff inventory.
So we have tools now that integrate these from a digital perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective. We can collect these inventories automatically, semi-automatically, and actively. But you say, well, I know who my people are, but do you have an electronic list of the people so that we can match those up to the hardware devices that are allocated to them, the software licenses that are allocated to them, the credentials that they're given? Like for now, the tools that we have allow you to set up credentials access for somebody to say, oh, I need access to this really important information on counseling for this period of time. And after that, the credentials go away. But if you don't have these things on these lists, these active lists, then you can't do it. What if you hire somebody? What are they supposed to get during onboarding? If you fire somebody, you need to be able to quickly remove their credentials and remove their licenses before they do something inappropriate. Well, unless you have that electronically and integrated like we're talking about, we have the tools to do this today, then you're not able to do those things. All right, but that's your security foundation. If you don't know what you have, you don't know that list of your people, the software, et cetera, especially the data, then you can't secure your company, your organization. So 2, lock it up. Once you've got it, especially at home. If you've got USBs at home, what if somebody says, oh, my cousin needed one and walked in my office and grabbed one or whatever. You need to lock these things up. Home security is generally not as good as your work security or your organization's security. And then make sure that every text password is unique for each account. Also consider a password manager like what?
Like I choose to use LastPass because it's free for the majority of their options. It also bridges between Macs and PCs and my phone or Android tablets, different browsers. It can use Chrome, Firefox, Safari if you wanted to use that. It's really actually easy to store them. It's very secure. And then you just only have to remember one password or a multi-factor authentication using like bio, like your thumbprint or something, or Face ID to get into it. Significantly easier than trying to remember 74 16-digit passwords.
So the password manager automatically generates passwords for you. You just remember a passphrase to get into the password manager. And then a couple other things. Make sure that you secure and separate your most valuable data, the crown jewels, et cetera, over here, so that you can lock those up really securely. You don't have to secure everything at the same level as you do with your most valuable stuff. Nobody can afford to secure everything to the greatest extent. And then configure the security settings on your operating system, Windows 10 Pro. Don't use Windows 10 Home. You need to use Windows 10 Pro because you can put in the security settings. And then Office 365, Microsoft 365 have some phenomenal security settings. And in our packages, we set those things up automatically so that people are already set. Why do you want to do this? Well, look at all the information that's available if somebody gets your phone. All your recent stuff, your files, your contacts, your travel, everything is on there. And if somebody gets access to that, and a lot of the same things on your laptop, then they have everything that they need. 2 is better than 1, multi-factor authentication. It's just a fact. Just do it now. It increases the security of your credentials substantially. And multi-factor just means that it's a combination of something you have, something you are, fingerprint, face recognition, iris scanner, and then something like a password or a PIN. And you want to make sure that you're moving in this direction because the industry is moving in this direction, and Microsoft now is like taking on this pretty strongly, right?
Yeah, so right now, I was just talking with some of the Microsoft folks, and they've actually moved from their password policy of changing your password every 70 days, which can be really, really annoying to try to remember that. Now they've actually, because of the effectiveness and the robustness of the multi-factor authentication, they've moved that to a year. And even cooler than that is now that it's, again, developing and so robust, they're actually trying to move away from passwords altogether, just from using multi-factor authentication.
Yep. And then control remote access into the company and out to your people that are working remotely. Just like we were talking about, the RDP attacks, remote desktop attacks have been increased substantially because cyber criminals know everybody's out there. And if they can get on that home computer or the work computer that's being used at home inappropriately, and they can get into the company through RDP, now they can access all the company data. And that's really, really bad. And somebody else was just asking me about what about Wi-Fi, right? You never, ever, ever want to use Wi-Fi that's not protected by a firewall or Wi-Fi that you have on your cell phone. That's great. You can use that for work. That's what our company does. But never use free Wi-Fi at the airport, Starbucks. I mean, it just doesn't matter. It's such a substantial risk to your company, your organization, your church. It's just not worth doing. Never, ever, ever, ever. And then once you have access to a firewall protected Wi-Fi, then use a VPN, right? It's a network that's encrypted all the way from where you are to your company or whatever. If you don't use a firewall protected Wi-Fi, you could already be infected before you tie into that encrypted tunnel to your company or your organization, your church. So what that means is you're just using an encrypted, super secure way to put viruses and other malware inside your church or organization. So you don't want to do that. I already talked about that. Okay. So the last thing, you want to make sure that you require your people to use a protected Wi-Fi and a VPN when they're doing remote businesses. And then develop a security mindset. It's just that everybody at your organization needs to remember that if something looks suspicious, it probably is. It's probably inappropriate. I mean, people's human nature is pretty good. Human nature is what's used, though, however, to have people do things that phishing and cyber criminals are trying to get people to do. But by using, for example, urgent messages and say, you must do this now because your credit card or whatever, or you must transfer this money immediately. Don't open any attachments unless you know exactly who they are. Much more difficult when we're working remotely. We used to work down the office from each other, and I'd just say, Sam, is this from you? He goes, yeah, it's from me, you know. So now I have to text him or call him or something like that. I generally call it to talk in person. And then this last thing here is like, always execute your business using a regular user account instead of an admin account because of all the reasons that Sam talked about earlier. And then finally, train your people. Your cyber defenses depend on your people. You can put all this money into all those solutions, all those technical solutions, all the processes, but your people can undermine that if they're not really aware of what they're supposed to be doing. And so we have, for example, access to ESET training. We have free ESET training, premium training. Know Before training is really, really good. We set up companies and organizations in Know Before the same price they would buy it if they went out and bought it from Know Before. But if they buy it from us, same price, we actually manage it. We generate reports. We let them know what's going on. They can use those reports and submit those reports through their legal counsel to say, yeah, we did all the right things. You know, if they get hacked or something like that, they say we took all the right steps. We demonstrated due care. We did the right things from a legal perspective. So that's it. Take inventory, lock it up. 2 is better than 1. Control remote access, develop a security mindset, and train your people. So now let's look at how to actually implement those 6 steps with some specific solutions. All right. So, if you're working remotely, you should be asking yourself, is it time to address PCI? Is it time to address SOX? Is it time to address HIPAA? You want to address those things before you get audited, right? You don't want to wait until somebody contacts you that you're going to be audited. Well, how do you comply with all these requirements with remote people working on their home networks or on their home computers? It just doesn't work that way. You're still responsible for protecting that sensitive information about your staff, about your members in your church, about financials, about counseling. All that stuff still needs to be protected, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about when some companies say, well, I'm just going to use a VPN and then everything's going to be good. And we'll illustrate right now where you just can't do that, all right? So if you even meet compliance requirements, you still need to be secure, okay? And if you don't have compliance requirements, you still need security, right? All right. Here's the hybrid office. Sam, what's the hybrid office?
Right. So during the pandemic, we had a majority of the workforce that all went remotely, right? So that's 5 days a week, 8, 10 hours a day from home. Now that things are starting to kind of soften, I guess is a good way to present it, people are trying out these hybrid offices, which I think are really, really cool. And that means like maybe work 2 days a week, social distancing in your office, your regular office, and then work like 3 days at home. To me, that's a hybrid office. And I think it's a great way to kind of cycle people through your office environment while keeping that social distancing.
And part of another aspect of hybrid office is that for your organization, some people will come back on site full-time. Some people will stay home full-time. Twitter, the entire organization, they're going to stay remote permanently. They're all going to work remote. They thought, hey, this is really cool. We're going to do that, right? But then if you're going to do that, you have to address the technical solutions here to make sure that your company is protected, your organization is protected, your house of worship is protected. So we've been doing those kinds of things since we started our company, integrating those kinds of remote secure solutions since we started. Our company is 100% remote. I want to use this illustration right here. And Sam, can I switch with you for a second? So here's the non-secured home office. And we put this illustration together because when we say, oh, the VPN doesn't actually work the way you thought it was going to work, or the security doesn't quite work the way that you thought it was going to work, here's a solution, or a diagram that lets you see what we're talking about. So here's your internet, your Cox, your AT&T, whatever it is, and it comes in through your modem, and you get your Wi-Fi, and you have your router there, your Aris, or whatever it is from Cox. And then what happens is that you tie in together your home computers and everything, your Xbox, your smart TV that has a 50-cent server in there for the wireless systems that's in there. How much security is in that 50-cent server? 0. Your smart refrigerator, also sharing information with who? We don't know. So all these germs, all these viruses and stuff like that are running around in this environment, and you say, oh, I'm going to use my corporate or my organizational computer, I'm going to hook up to the Wi-Fi so I can use my VPN. Well, you are now subject to all those viruses, all that malware, before you even get a chance to tie into that VPN. So when you do tie into the VPN, it's already toast. You're now going to be feeding those viruses up and into your company. So what's the solution? It's actually really simple, right? Put a firewall, router, Wi-Fi for your company right there. Oh, come on, man. That's all it is, right? So if you take the router and you take this over to your firewall, then it blocks all of those viruses and stuff from getting to your corporate computer. Now you VPN in through here when you're protected, okay? It's just not that complex, but we see people ignoring this like all the time and saying, well, we're just going to move on. So we wanted to show you a couple of examples. It's so giant, this huge equipment. Well, there's a Z3, right? That's it. This is really high-level, high-quality stuff. It even has a cell phone, so you can fail over to the cell phone right there, or you can just use the cell phone itself. You can actually augment your bandwidth by using that. Now, we've teamed up with a company that has integrated all of the network-attached storage, IPS, IDS, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, the network segmentation, VPN, what else? I mean, there's like up to 5 terabytes of storage, all in one box. It has a separate Wi-Fi device so that you can put that wherever you want to get the best Wi-Fi reception. But all of your office is right here in one box. So you don't have all these different devices you have to buy. So anyway, that's what we do for our integrated solution. And people can do that sort of thing through their own partnerships. And it has all the stuff that's on the list right there. All right. So what happens now is that we developed a solution called Signature Remote Suite for executives, clergy, et cetera, to work out of their homes, and it integrates these kinds of solutions together with secure version of Windows 10, secure version of Office 365, remote management of their IT, et cetera, et cetera. Beautiful flyer kind of thing that Sam put together. He does our marketing for us. It's really cool. So if you're interested, contact us. And then Soho Wow is for small companies. And Soho Wow does those same 4 elements, is that we've literally put this whole package together with this, but a pre-secured version of Windows, a pre-secured version of Office 365, Microsoft 365. And then we have remote monitoring and management agents that we put on each of your devices that we monitor in our Security Operations Center. And what that does now is that for small companies, small organizations, for churches and stuff like that, now you can have something that integrates IT and security. It's literally integrated from the ground up. So rather than saying, well, I let my IT folks do this and I need to find security people to do this, well, you can do that. Let us know. We'll be able to help from a cybersecurity perspective if you love your IT. That's fantastic. We do that all the time. That's one of our business models. We'll literally come in and help you with your security to augment your IT, either internal or external IT team. Doesn't matter to us. On the flip side, if you're open to having just a package that just works, that's what this has been developed for over the last several years. We've been putting that together. If you stop and think about it, if you already know it works, it's solid, then you're not calling IT all the time, figuring out, hey, well, why doesn't this work? It's a known solution that works. That's why we use it. And because of that, it's much more affordable than other systems. All right. So, looking ahead. Privacy and security are mandatory. They're just not options anymore. You have to take care of these things. You can't say, well, I didn't know. Well, everybody knows, right? Everybody's been getting hacked. Everybody's been responding. And that you have to take your responsibility to address these issues. You can't just say, well, it's just not that important to me anymore. All right? In houses of worship, it's the same thing, right? Now you know that you can afford to do these things. Now you know you need to do these things. And so there's just no excuse to not do it anymore. So what companies like ours do is we focus on getting that security and IT out of the way. It's we look at it as like turn on the light switch. You don't turn on the light switch and you go, oh, I wonder how that light switch is actually getting the power to my lights. Is it an A light switch or is it a B light switch or is it a cable or a B cable? Who cares? You go and you flip the light switch on, the light works. That's what you want your secured IT to be, that combination of security and IT. And that's kind of what we talk about. All right, so just finishing up here. We got 3 choices. Do it yourself, right? Go out there and take care of these things yourself. I like to do a lot of things myself. The second choice is ask for help. We do this all the time. If you have any questions, just contact us. We'll be glad to answer your questions and point you toward resources like we talked about earlier from the Center for Internet Security. And then finally, hire the experts. Hire the experts if they're a good company, reputable company, to come in and help you secure your organization, your church, your house of worship, and make sure that IT is super stable and secure so that you don't have to focus on that. You can really focus on supporting your congregation and your mission in the region that you're serving in. So we walk away with, we've got 2 packages for clergy and executives and 1 for organizations, up to a couple hundred staff members. And so really those are the main messages that we wanted to share with you today. Sam, any final words?
No, just stay safe out there, especially with all the innovation and creativity. Just make sure you're addressing the certain precautions that come with all that.
But wait, there's more. Sam, what's in the bag?
Oh. So this is always a favorite little moment. This is what we call a war walk bag. This is basically what we use. We have this really covert little...
Now, before he goes into that, the reason we share this is to show you how easy it is for hackers to get to you.
Yeah.
Because people just don't believe it.
So this is a war walk bag. It's actually rather concealable if you wanted to, and it houses everything that we use for what we call a war walk. Basically, we can walk around a building or a parking lot and kind of take samples of the network, if you will, kind of see how things are set up. We can get inside the network if we needed to. Those types of things just from the little devices that are in this bag.
We were doing a war walk on one of the large companies here. It was one of our clients here in town. And we came back in and went to the IT director, and we said, "Oh, I didn't know you had a Chevy Volt." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And it's like we were able to pick up his Chevy Volt talking to us on this Wi-Fi hacking machine right here. And he just shook his head. He says, "I had no idea that information was being shared."
And this one's a fun one. This is a Raspberry Pi that's actually been configured into a smart TV hacking device. So it's got a little HDMI port there. You can just turn it on. You can stick it in the back of an HDMI TV and use that as a foothold into a network, which is fun. Let's see, what else do we have here? Wrong one. All right, this is a pineapple. So this little device right here, which is easily concealable in a drop ceiling or above a router, is a pretty dangerous little device that allows people to basically pretend to be your Wi-Fi. Say you're really used to logging into Rock Church Guest, okay? I can make this thing say Rock Church Guest. It'll kick you off of your normal one and have you log into this one instead.
And then still go right, it'll still go to the Rock Church Guest, but
Yep.
that's going to be in between.
In between, which allows bad people to do really interesting things and collect a lot of really interesting information. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, this one's fun. This one helps from our security perspective on searching for bugs and hidden cameras. So this is a little meter that we can use to walk around if people are concerned that maybe somebody's installed something in their network that they really shouldn't have. Let's see. Oh, this one's another fun one. Probably my favorite of all of these. This little guy right here acts similar to that pineapple, and it sets up a kind of a man-in-the-middle Wi-Fi thing. It's actually battery operated, so you put in the battery, turn it on, and you can leave it in a Starbucks or in a parking lot or underneath a seat somewhere, and people will, again, just like the Rock Church, it'll actually knock people off of their Wi-Fi, and you'll log in through this, and we'll be able to collect information that you probably don't want shared.
A large financial company was moving buildings, and they donated all their furniture and stuff, and so our organization actually took some of that furniture, and we had a whole crew of people over there loading up trucks to go ahead and take it out. And as we're loading up one of the desks, it felt a little funny underneath as we reached to pick up the desk. We looked underneath there, and there was a magnetic key logger that had been put underneath somebody's desk. And it used watch batteries instead of big batteries like that. Had a couple of batteries in there. And so it was literally underneath there, magnetically hooked to one of those desks inside the vice president's admin's office. Live thing there, man. I mean, that's for real.
And this is your favorite one, the rubber ducky,
rubber
if you
ducky.
wanted to talk about that one real quick.
Yeah, the rubber ducky, it looks like what? It just looks like a regular, it looks almost identical to the USB I gave you for this presentation, so you better check that out. Anyway, it's a rubber ducky, and what a rubber ducky does is that, sometimes when we go to talk to people about hiring us and stuff, we'll go in their executive conference room and stuff like that, and so they'll escort us from the front, and they'll take us to the executive conference room, and I say, "Excuse me for a second, do you mind if I go to the restroom?" And they go, "Oh yeah, it's right down the hall, just go to the left down there, it's past those cubicles down there." And so I'll walk out the door, and then just a few seconds later, I'll come walking back in. They say, "Oh, you couldn't find the bathroom?" I said, No, I know where it is, but I wanted to show you this. I said, "So you just let me walk out of here without an escort. I could walk right through your area here." And as I walk by those cubicles, I noticed a couple of computers running there. I said, "If I walk up to a computer and I plug this into that USB port on the computer, it's going to immediately stabilize, and then it's going to start typing 40,000 times faster than I can type, and it's going to put a bunch of code on there, pull a bunch of information and download it on here, and then in the last few seconds, it's going to remove any trace that was actually on that computer. When I come back from the bathroom, because that's 15 seconds is all it takes. When I come back from the bathroom, I just walk back and I pull this thing back out. I could have done that with your company. So that's why I want to talk to you about cybersecurity today, but also making sure that your physical security is set up so that people don't have physical access to your digital data.
And this is also...
Oh, and how much does this cost, Sam?
Oh, like $25 or something like that. Yeah, and they have a cheaper one if you want to build it yourself. The last one is, this is also a pineapple. I just wanted to show that it actually can mount to your belt. It runs off of a little, like a USB battery, and you can literally walk around connected to a jailbreaked Android cell phone and kind of do the same thing, but it's super, super covert. The reason we bring up all of this is not to scare you, well, a little bit, but it's really just to let you know that the risks are real, they're inexpensive, they're easy to use. There are 1,000 YouTube videos on just this, on how to set it up, get it up and running, and collect the information you want as a bad actor within like 10 minutes. If I can learn it, pretty much anybody can learn how to do that, and that's really scary.
So our walk away, what we really want you to take from this is that the risk is very real. Incidents are happening to houses of worship. They're very, very real. We've spent much time in the intelligence community learning how bad people operate, and now we use that insight to understand how cyber criminals and wrongdoers, harm doers, might be using that kind of approach to hurt your church and your people and your community. So we want you to walk away realizing it's very real, but there are things that you can do about it. Thank you very much.